Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody doing? Today we'll have another interesting video. I'll talk about fasting. So this video will be all about fasting and how that relates to longevity. So I hope you guys definitely enjoy it. I will lay down all the research involved or at least a lot of the research. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. It's one click away. Crush that like button. Alright, and so I guess we can get started here. Um, and so essentially, we talked a lot about the theories about these longevity genes, these sirtuins. Well, you can actually engage them right now. You can activate them. So then Buetner actually discovered these zones called blue zones, for example, Okinawa and Sardinia, and these people there live very, very long, these blue zones, and you can actually come up with their diets. You can see what they live, what they eat, right? Because these people are centenarians. They live hundreds of years. Like they live to 100 years, and so they eat things like vegetables, legumes, whole grains, with less meat, less sugar, and more veggies, right? So again, more veggies, less meat, fresh versus processed food. You can look at their diet, right, and see what is it that they consume. And so in the past, we used to think of pneumonia, tuberculosis, influenza, GI infections in the 1900s as being inevitable, as they accounted for literally half of the deaths in the United States. But this changed because of technologies and lifestyles where people literally lived in the next few decades much better due to these better technologies and pharmacology. And so today these are very rare, right? Things like pneumonia, tuberculosis, influenza, and GI infections, unless in aging. Aging is what usually people who are older usually are more likely to suffer from these. Even in the tech and pharmacology, though, you can still do the following. And the first one is simply eating less or fasting. So this is not malnutrition or starvation, right? And even take people like Hippocrates, and people back then actually even knew about this as well. There's research after World War I on rats by Mendel, Osborne, and Ferry that show that fasting actually leads to longevity. And in 1935, it was shown in rodents and fruit flies, where fasting actually boosts their defenses, allows them to face adversity, ward disease, and lower epigenetic changes by keeping cell identity. So essentially, it indicates that a little bit of stress actually allows the body to boost up the defenses against adversity, allows the body to fight it a lot better and prevent these epigenetic changes we talked about, allowing the cells to maintain their identity. So this is a 1935 study which shows it. And in the 1990s, it was shown also in yeast, whereby it delays these ERC circles we talked about, nuclear export, and it prevents nuclear export and prevents sterility. So, right, it prevents these changes that happen when the sirtuins leave the mating genes that we talked about, allowing the cells to keep their identity, preventing this ERC genomic instability from taking place. So this is what we see. That's how it leads to longevity, right? The study in 1935 and now in the 1990s. And in 1978, in Okinawa, these people literally ate less than in mainland China, less than 2/3 of what people eat in mainland China, and have longer lifespans and health spans. So longer lifespans and more healthy years. They had less stroke, tumors, and heart disease. Another study in the 1990s actually as well, it's called Biosphere, a 2-year project from 1991 to 1993. Walford studied in humans whereby people who were fasting, they had lower body mass by 15 to 20%, makes sense. Their blood pressure was lower by 25%, their blood sugar dropped 25%, and 30% lower cholesterol. And Duke University showed in 2017, the most recent one, involving humans, 145 adults eating 25% less calories, They're supposed to be 25%. They actually ate around 12% less and still nevertheless had longer health and reduced aging. And then Mcloughlin and Meredith are members of the CR Society, and they do it themselves, and they also see those effects in them. They have less cholesterol, better heart rate, and better vision. And then in rhesus monkeys, it was also shown where they had 30% reduction when they're in eating when they were in middle aged, and again you see those same type of results, right? Better defenses, less kind of ears, better defenses, less disease, the blood pressure is down, the cholesterol, the blood sugars, less disease, longer lifespans, all that. And intermittent fasting can also be done. Valter Longo is the guy in intermittent fasting, and it showed in 1946 that this actually increases rats' lifespan by 15 to 20%. Actually, this was shown by Calzon and Hoezzzel, and essentially they had lower IGF-1, they lost weight, fat, less cholesterol, so similar to what we saw before, but as well as IGF-1, this marker which is shown in longevity, the less you have of it, and Barzilai and So also showed that IGF-1 goes down, which leads to longer life when you're undergoing fasting or intermittent fasting. In Ikaria Greece, a third of the population lives over 90 because they religiously fast as part of their religions. And in Bama, China, they skip breakfast and you get the same benefits of, right? You live longer. Peter Atiyah actually does a 3-day fast where he does a super cleansing and autophagy where you remove these old proteins and all that. So essentially, you can undergo intermittent fasting like 16 and 8, where you don't eat for 16 hours, eat for 8, etc. There's the 5-2 version. You can skip breakfast, skip lunch, skip any meal. You can not eat once or twice a week without food. You can alternate, stop, eat, etc. So this is fasting. Lots of research is done on fasting. The second one is called amino right, and this means eating less amino acids. Our body needs amino acids, especially essential ones, right? Because it can't make it, and protein satiates us. We need it to feel full. But heavy animal-based diets are actually linked to cardiovascular mortality and cancer risks. Things like hot dogs, sausages, hamburgers, bacon. We want essentially a rabbit lunch versus a lion's lunch. We want to reduce all-cause mortality, and the way to do it is by having a plant-based diet. Lower amino acids actually put stress on the body, which is good for us, and that leads to mTOR inhibition. Low amino acids activates mTOR when you have low energy, and the stress activates autophagy, right? Similar to what I talked about Peter Atiyah, and they're going a 3-day fast, complete cleansing. Same thing here. If you eat less amino acids, essentially you're kind of mimicking closer to a fasting state. You're still eating, but just less amino acids, less proteins, less of these things that really make us full, and you get autophagy and recycling of these damaged proteins. You essentially hunker down. So by reducing meat and dairy and these animal proteins and eggs, you actually live longer as well by activating the stress in these longevity genes. Cabo and Miller actually showed that low levels of methionine, and then Lowing showed that methionine reduction causes mice to shed fat fast and reduce blood glucose. And then there's arginine and 3-branched amino acids like leucine, isoleucine, and valine, which is also shown to raise mTOR. And so, therefore, eating less of them would lead to a longer lifespan. You can simply reduce things like chicken, beef, lamb, poultry, fish, eggs, right? And therefore, people who drink these protein shakes, like leucine drinks, yeah, they increase muscle mass, but they may hunch with the long term. They can lower long-term survival, actually. And so vegetarians actually have a lower risk of CVD, cardiovascular disease, and cancer, more polyphenols in their diet, and a longer lifespan. And so based on these studies, we want a vegetable-rich, low-protein diet. Okay? So again, studies have shown that fasting and eating less amino acids and undergoing a plant-based diet does in fact activate your body's defense mechanisms, prevents you or helps the body ward off disease, reduce blood sugar, cholesterol, blood pressure, all of those markers, and yeah, and eating less amino acids actually allows autophagy to take place again, which is pretty neat, and actually leads to um, a longer lifespan and is good for the long term, right? So this is really, really interesting. This is the first kind of two things that I want to share with you guys, and they're very simple, just simply eating less, and then, well, eating less amino acids. So eating a vegetable rich, less meat, less dairy, less eggs, right? Less animal protein. Doesn't mean you shouldn't eat them at all, but just a reduced amount. So these things actually are cheaper. You don't have to spend anything. You actually save money by doing this. So if somebody tells you that's crazy, you're actually saving. It's actually cheaper financially. And it turns out that actually the more you do it, the better. So David Sinclair found that actually what's been shown is, of course, without going into malnutrition, but actually there isn't really a limit. The more you do it, the better, without going into malnutrition. The more you fast, the more you don't eat, actually the better is what has been shown in rats. And in his lab, he showed literally these rats were fasting at their second year of life, because rats live around 3 years. So the second year, when rats on average started getting old, started having gray hair and all that, wrinkles, very, very slow, not moving fast. Well, the mice are fasting at 2 years, were still young, no gray hair, and were literally moving super fast. It's as if they're still kind of like in the young phase of their life. They weren't even middle-aged. They weren't even in the, at that period where they would start getting gray hair. And so I think that's really, really, really cool that he was able to show in this lab literally these results in mice. And as I mentioned, the Duke study, the 2017 study, actually does show that to be the case also in humans, right? Even a 12% reduction still leads to a considerably longer lifespan. But most of the research is in mice and or in rodents. And in his lab, he showed literally mice who eat like 30% less have a 25% increase in lifespan. Less gray hair, moving faster, all that. So simple two things: fasting and then eating less amino acids, specifically less animal protein, which is associated with CVD, cancer, and other bad stuff, and as well as early mortality. So essentially, the two are related: eating less and specifically less proteins, because that's what most that's what makes most full, right? And essentially, going hungry is actually a good thing. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully I made it interesting. It's actually pretty cool when I was learning about it. But fasting, you hear it all everywhere, and actually there's so much research on this area. Probably much more than what I'll be talking about in the future videos, like on being cold and other forms of stress, which promotes these longevity genes. But I'll just tell you right now, there's not nearly as much research done on being cold as there is on fasting. Fasting is like the super area. Like, we know it, and yet we don't do it. Like, eating less is good for you, and yet people still don't do it. Like, it's actually good for you, wink wink. And so that's really, really interesting. And I just wanted to let you guys know that because we tend to really stuff our faces with food. And I know I love to eat. I'm a foodie as well, but actually that's probably the best thing you can do for yourself, is simply not eat, if you guys want to have a healthy lifespan and stay young for a long time. And it actually saves you money. So I just want to put this message across. It saves you money. Alright, I'm done. See you guys in the next video. Peace. All the best.